Someone's got a clock going in the background and it's very timely. I can hear the clicking.
Okay, Jason, looks like you're live streaming, so you should be ready to go.
All right, then let's say we'll call this meeting in order at 5:33 p.m. Way to persevere, get the technical difficulties taken out, and we will do roll call. We'll show everyone present except for Alan Billingsley. And with that being said, if everyone's had a chance to read the minutes from November, it is because we're no meeting in December and we're delayed. This is our January meeting coming on Lunar New Year. So I'd entertain a motion to accept if there's one out there.
I so move.
Okay, Michael.
Second.
Oh, Fred, I think Fred got in there with the second. So Michael and Fred, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, unanimous approval streak continues, people. Nice work. I don't see anybody in here for public comment. Nikki, do you have any public comment that you're aware of?
No public comment at all.
Perfect, thank you. And so we'll roll on to new business and we have to elect a chair and a vice chair. And do we want to go with the vice chair first?
I think our current vice chair is doing a wonderful job and I renominate him.
All right, perfect. Is there anybody else any other nominations? One more time, any more nominations for vice president? Hearing none, well, I think we have a de facto. I don't think we even need to vote on that. Vito, vice president.
I think you do need to vote on it. I think we have.
Oh, we do still have to vote on it, even though, okay. All in favor of Vito going vice president?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none.
Sorry.
You were an aye, right, Sylvia?
I'm the first one.
All right, Vito, I think you got it unanimously. And so now we'll take nominations for chair.
I once again think we have an excellent chair and I would like to renominate him for another term.
All right. Any other nominations for chair? And one more time, any more nominations for chair? Hearing none, and I want to thank Vito. I did have a quarter last year where there were 3 meetings in a row. I couldn't make it just because work obligations in Federal Way. So I appreciate you stepping up and filling in. And with that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we have unanimous approval. So Vito and I, vice chair and chair. Thank you all for your confidence and we hope to continue to serve you well. Okay, and so next we're gonna talk with Courtney. He's gonna tell us about all things trees, and we have a new ad hoc committee in the city reviewing the tree policy. And yeah, so take it away, Courtney.
Thank you, Chair. And hello, everybody on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I'm very excited to share a tree preservation code update with all of you. Nikki, do you have the PowerPoint or can I share my screen? Would I be able to do that? Let me see here, experimenting. All right, can you all see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, let me just. So I formatted the presentation this evening to share some history as to what led to us updating the tree preservation code, an overview of the existing code, and and including how we define significant trees and what we're currently requiring for property owners to preserve, how one might go about removing trees, those exemptions, as well as some critical issues that we hope to address with the code update. So starting off with what happened so far over the course of 2021, we found ourselves faced with some unique infill development projects. And as part of those, there were requests to remove a large number of trees that resulted in some public concern. The City Council heard that concern and requested an overview of the tree preservation code. To assist us with the assignment, it was recommended that we hire a third-party consultant to bring forward a lens of the best practice pertaining to tree preservation with a real focus on sustainability, climate change, environmental justice, and coupling all of that with our existing development. In November, we finalized a contract with Burke Consulting, and it was formalized to form an ad hoc committee, which had set aside up to 13 members with certain positions with various interests and from some of the lower income census tracts to ensure that there was a diverse representation. Overall, our goal is to complete this code update by August 2022, which, if you're familiar with code updates, is a very aggressive and quick timeline, but we're optimistic that we will be able to meet it. So again, one of the big catalysts for this change was that our current regulations regarding tree preservation and exemptions and mitigations are causing for some concern. Specifically with infill development, we often see a request for tree removal that could result in the potential clear cutting, for example, of a tree or of a specific lot. Today, there's generally 5 categories of tree removal that are completely exempt from permitting, and those categories are listed here. And what that means is if you fall into one of these categories, you're able to remove trees without a permit, and you're not really subject to mitigation. So those exemptions include lots of less than 17,000 square feet in single family residential zones. So most of the areas throughout the city that you see a lot of houses on top of one another, those are our single family residential zoning districts. If those lots are under 17,000 square feet, which you find very frequently in our R3, R4, more medium density zones, a lot of Oak Brook, for example, folks are able to remove trees without a permit. Next, industrially zoned properties are exempt from tree mitigation and tree preservation, except when it's required as a mitigation measure under SEPA, which is the State Environmental Protection Act. And we do SEPA for most all new construction. But if there was a property that had a tree in an industrial zone and SEPA wasn't required, like they just wanted to remove the tree, that would be possible. Next, removal of non-significant trees not protected. And on our next slide, I'll go over the definition of significant trees. Fourth, removal of trees in the right-of-way and easements for a public agency or franchise utility. And fifth, emergency removal of hazardous trees. That definition of significant trees here in the city of Lakewood, and this does vary by jurisdiction, when measured 4.5 feet, so diameter at breast height is another common way that this is known. The tree has a minimum diameter of 9 inches for evergreen and deciduous trees. And for Gary oak trees, that's slightly smaller, 6 inches at that diameter of breast height. And then there is another clause that regardless of tree diameter, the director does have the ability to determine if a tree is significant, if it is found to be particularly unique or important and valuable to the wildlife habitat. And if anybody has questions, I do have a couple spots where I will naturally pause, but as we're going, if you have a question, feel free to interrupt. So for those projects that aren't exempt that I outlined a couple slides ago, there are preservation criteria, and this is a lot of information on the slide. I'll verbally just give you an overview. Essentially for perimeter and interior, so perimeter, we require that all significant trees be preserved within 20 feet of a property line. And then interior, depending on the type of development, a certain percentage we request to be preserved. There is an exception to that, which is at the top here, where it says significant trees can be removed if it's required for the siting and the placement of driveway, road access, building, visual clearance for right-of-way, utilities, sidewalks, or subject to the discretion of the director. But wait, there's more. We also preserve trees in buffers and sensitive critical areas or that are subject to SEPA. So we have a critical areas, several in the city of Lakewood as outlined by title, chapter 14 defines our critical areas. And if, for example, there are trees located in a wetland or a creek buffer or one of our lake buffers, those also have to be preserved, even if they fit in one of the other categories, like a single family residential home. And then for SEPA requirements, that was also mentioned in the exemptions, even if a single family residential lot or an industrial lot wants to remove trees, if it's required to be protected under SEPA, they can't remove it even in the future, unless it was potentially deemed hazardous or there was some other reason. Outside of this, in commercial zones, generally, once a project is developed, tree removal permits are almost always required, regardless of lot size. That isn't always the case for residential lots. And here I have something taken directly from the code that explains, based off of the lot size, the number of significant trees that would be allowed to be removed in 1 year and 5 years without a permit. So individuals would be able to remove this number of trees based off of their lot size in any 1 or 5 year period. Sometimes people want to remove even more trees, variety of reasons. And that's when we get into our mitigation standards. We have a couple of options when it comes to mitigation. First, we start with on-site replacement. So somebody removes a tree and we say, okay, based off of the size of this tree, this is the number of trees that you could replant on site. And they would be able to replant trees on their site. We also have the option for off-site replacement. If there was a designated area that they had identified, they could potentially plant trees elsewhere. Or we have something in the city called a tree mitigation fund, where folks can pay into a city operated fund to pay for future trees to be planted. The way that mitigation works is it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So we do math that takes the diameter at breast height in inches, we multiply it by 2, and then the minimum size of a tree is 3 inches. So we would divide that by 3. And then it's outlined in our fee schedule that each tree is $400. So I gave an example here. Mr. Buer wants to remove a 20-inch fir tree on his lot, and he's already exceeded the number of trees that he can remove. So now he's required to give us some mitigation. This is that calculation that we do. Once again, multiplying the total inches by 2, dividing by 3, about 13 replacement trees. So he could pay $5,200 in mitigation fee, or he could find a place on his lot to plant those 13 trees. Any questions about our code before I get into some critical issues?
I had one or two. I'm assuming the director in charge is community development.
Yes,
Okay.
Dave Buer.
And then the 5-year period, is that rolling, or is it like from 90 to 95? You can take this many trees, or how does that work?
It would be in any 5-year period. So starting today and then 5 additional years. And that is one of our critical issues, is that we have it's difficult to track that, right? We have GIS imaging where we could go, we could look and see based off of the last satellite imaging, how many trees were on a lot versus how many are there now. But because no permit is required, it's very difficult to track.
Sure.
I have a question. We had a neighbor some people who bought a house just down the street. And before they even moved in, they cut down 5 huge, big Douglas firs. Everything on the lot just scraped the entire lot. And the neighbors were horrified. And they were told that as long as it's Douglas firs, nobody cares how many you take down. But it makes a big difference to the community. All of a sudden you have this big open space that used to be forested. Is there no concern for Douglas firs?
No, all trees in Lakewood as of today, and except for fruit trees. So all significant trees as defined, anything over 9 inches or 6 inches for a Gary oak are created equally. The exception to that being if it's a priority white oak woodland, meaning a very large collection of Oregon white oak trees. Otherwise, all of those trees are determined to be significant. The way that the code is written today, though, on single family lots, there's a certain number of trees that can be removed every year. And it's a possibility that that lot was under 17,000 square feet, which as an exemption category means that they could remove as many trees as they'd like without the requirement of a permit. And this is a concern that we get a lot from neighbors and from folks, that just because the lot is that size doesn't mean that those trees aren't valuable.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible.
You're muted.
I have a question. Is there a follow-up on the replacement trees? If you were going to do the mitigation and we're going to replant, is there a selection? Who does the selection of the type of tree that goes
Sure.
back?
So they are able to do the selection of the type of tree. Generally, we do request that it be deciduous and native, but depending on the year, tree inventory can really vary. In the last couple of years, we've actually seen some smaller trees and folks having to plant even more than what the standard replacement would be, just because the inventory isn't there. So we do certainly monitor that. We require that the trees be alive for 5 years. They're required to at least get them through that 5-year period. And city's planning staff and our inspectors are in charge of monitoring that those get planted. Mary, I see that your hand is raised.
Thank you, Courtney. You had mentioned that if I wanted to take a big tree off my property and you did the math and I have to do 13 more, you said I'd have to find 13. I could give money, or I would find 13 or a place on my property to do 13 trees. Can I find other places to put my 13 trees? Like, for instance, my neighbor or the park or the cemetery?
That is
on my property.
That is an option. We don't see it used very often, but we do have an option for off-site tree replacement. Typically, people opt to pay into the tree mitigation fund and then have the city worry about where they're going to end up going. But there is an option for off-site tree replacement. We would just need that plan outlined as part of a tree removal permit, and then we would review and approve it or monitor it, make sure that you have all the property owners' permission, that these are places that trees would do well, and that they would be able to be monitored.
And then just my follow-up. So say I paid my $5,200 for that, and then I just don't care because you're going to take care of it. So when the city comes forward and says, hey, I'm doing this great project, I'd love to use some of this mitigation money to plant trees in parks or wherever, do I have to plant 13, or do I just get to utilize those resources to do what we think is appropriate for the site?
So at the time of permitting, we actually would collect that $5,200, and then it sits in a fund until the city has a project for it to be planted. There used to be a partnership with Clover Park Technical College, but I don't believe that partnership exists today. That program, to my knowledge, has been discontinued. And so now what we see more of is parks projects, street tree projects, that type of project where we would use some of those funds for planting trees. Dave, your hand is also raised.
I also want to give the board, I don't want to give the board the impression that we don't do enforcement.
Mhm.
We are actually very aggressive with enforcement when we find out about it, and it has to be timely. The other part to this is illegal tree removal is a priority for the Code Enforcement Division within the Lakewood Police Department. The fines are substantial. Usually it's over $50,000. Usually we end up in Superior Court. They do appeal, but we do follow through. These fees are collected and placed into the tree account, and in the past they have been used for major revegetation around Wahop Lake. We have, I think, quite a bit of money in there currently. We're waiting for the next big project, or we'll see if the City Council wants to do something special as a part of the tree review.
How would we know if that's an approved removal of trees or just somebody who brought in the cutters and told them to cut it down?
Please call. Please
Or
call
you
the
can go
community.
online and look up the address. So we now have a active online dashboard. The city just recently implemented a new permitting system, and all of those approved tree removals should be listed on the website. If you were to look up the address as an approved permit, unless it's exempt, or if it's into one of these categories, you know, for single family residential lots in this category for size that says NA, because under our current code, as long as it's not a critical or sensitive area, they would be allowed to remove as many trees as they'd like. or on some of these larger, there are a certain number that they don't have to have permits for. So in single family residential zones, these would be the categories. But as Dave also mentioned, we get calls very frequently regarding tree removal, and our code enforcement responds the same day. And if there's an issue, we address it and issue citations, request tree removal permits to be applied for, to assess fees. We always try to go for voluntary compliance first. There's a lot of folks out there that don't realize what permits are required for different projects. But one thing that's very difficult to get rid of is a tree stump in the same day. Typically, it takes some time, and our code enforcement members are usually able to go out and see the size and the types of trees that were removed. And so we have pretty good data to be able to run the numbers to see how many trees would need to be replaced, or what that fee in lieu of would be, even after a tree gets removed without a permit. And so people are able to come in and apply for permits afterwards. And then they're still subject to the same regulations that anyone else would be. Any other questions about the code overview? We already talked, this board, no surprise, identified a lot of the big issues. That's the reason that we have prompted this code update. So the exemptions for industrial zones, as well as single family residential zones under 17,000 square feet. We get a lot of calls, there's a lot of concern. It's also very difficult to track. A community group has also expressed a lot of interest and made some very good points about the importance of preserving oak trees in the city and throughout the state of Washington. It's also something that's being addressed by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife in the next year or so, the importance of maintaining oak trees. And so they will be working with us as well on this update. Lastly, in our code, I think I took the exact code section, it defines buffers and sensitive or critical areas. Sensitive is not well defined in our code. So we use all available resources in GIS imaging to try to ascertain if an area could be considered sensitive so that a tree shouldn't be removed. Critical area, very easy to know, very clearly defined by our code. Sensitive area, less so. So that's one area that we're looking to clean up. And then the tracking of the tree removal permits. And really what this comes down to is there's a lot of trees that get removed. It's balancing the amount of staff resources that we have to permit and review every single tree that gets removed in the city. And where does that balance lie? Or is there a simple way for us to keep record and require, everybody make a simple application before they remove a tree just so we can track it? So those are some things that we will definitely be looking at, as well as the environmental justice component. There's a growing awareness and concern that the existing tree canopy, the majority of trees are found in more affluent areas. And you can see that based off of the median family income. So looking at tree maps, we see the majority of our residential urban canopies in the darker areas. And then you also see the majority of the heat severity in the areas with fewer trees. It is worth mentioning that those areas that are yellow also are directly adjacent to or are part of our commercial and industrial zones. So it's not all single family residential lots, but it is definitely a key issue that our consultant will be focusing on and advising the city council on. So for next steps, the application for the ad hoc committee just closed on January 23rd. The city council is currently in the process of reviewing applications and will be making appointments to that ad hoc committee. Once again, they set aside up to 13 positions. We don't know exactly what the final number will be, but no more than 13. We estimate that those meetings will begin likely in early or mid-February or possibly the first week in March. They will hold approximately 6 meetings, and then once between February and May, once they have some initial recommendations, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a completely rewritten code by May, but we will start also engaging with boards and commissions, bringing forward those recommendations and starting to expand the conversation beyond just the ad hoc committee starting in May. And then we're hoping to have planning commission review no later than June, city council review in July, and city council adoption in August. Again, a very aggressive timeline. But we are all excited. We have a really good team focused on this effort. So with that, any additional questions regarding tree preservation? I kind of indicated here, May is probably when you will hear from me again, or members of Burke again, regarding what the ad hoc committee has recommended or what the team has identified as being some issues. And we'd love to receive your feedback and recommendations on those items as well.
I have a question, Courtney. Do we have any relationship with tree removal services?
Yes, we actually had for sure one, but I believe two of the applicants came forward from tree removal services. So the stakeholder outreach for this ad hoc committee was great. I think that we did targeted emails to about between 60 and 70 different people and organizations. And that number continued to grow as more people were filtered to our staff to add to it. And then each of those organizations were also asked to distribute the list. Dave, do you by chance off the top of your head know how many applicants we received? I could look it up really quick, but
36, a couple of them were duplicates.
any other questions?
I had,
This
I
is
had
the-
one. Oh, go ahead, Vito.
This is a great topic. Anxious to hear more about it.
Thank you.
And so, Courtney, I just had a couple, just a suggestion. I think I'm excited because we're going to get to hear Dave's climate change update today. But in the last presentation he gave us, there was some really interesting things that might tie with the tree canopy, and just a recommendation that committee get that same climate presentation, because I think it would be valuable for them. I don't know. I know it's occurring in Federal Way, but I think this would be a good time, and I would like to advocate that this could be good timing for an urban forestry division of a department or division in the city. I know we're dealing with ever increasing tree concerns and tree needs, and taking up a lot of our time. And so my recommendation to City Council would be that they consider that in allocating some funds for probably a couple positions in that realm. And so with that being said, I was disappointed. I've got too many commitments, so I couldn't apply to be on this subcommittee. But I am interested in knowing more if there's open houses or when it's going in front of Planning Commission. And so if you could get that to Mary or email this group as you know those dates, I'd definitely be interested in attending and participating.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, Courtney. Great presentation.
One more thing that I would add for the group, in talking with the city attorney, the issue of tree preservation has become a statewide concern of cities and counties.
Okay.
So it's just not the city of Lakewood. I think other cities are looking at this. Other counties are looking at this. Pierce County recently changed their code to address Gary Oaks. You will see more of this in the very near future in other communities, so stay tuned.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one more plug is, I think Lakewood could get there very easily, but to me, being a Tree City USA, or have Lakewood be a Tree City USA, would be something to add to the resume and look good. And we're already a great American city, so how about a Tree City USA too? But again, that takes commitment from the City Council, and understand that. So again, thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Anything else for Courtney? All right, hearing nothing, we're going to roll on to Dave, and he's going to give us his climate change study update.
Thank you, Jason. I was wondering if Nikki could share my document with the group. Is that possible? Okay, here we go. Thank you, Nikki. As I recall, in 2021, the City Council adopted a climate change chapter to its comprehensive plan, and at that time included a bunch of policies as well as a long list of implementation measures. And at the time, commission was quite concerned that the list, which I believe was about 89, was too extensive and that we possibly couldn't do all this. Nevertheless, they chose to move it forward to the city council. City council shared the same comments that there's just too much on the list to do to be successful. And at times there was some concern that maybe we should withhold adopting the climate change chapter and work on defining the implementation measures. My comment to both the commission and the council was, let's move forward. We'll have a list of implementation measures, but from that list, can we develop a work plan? And so beginning in the fall of 2021, the Planning Commission through September, October, November, December, and January worked on this. And so we had a process where we had a series of votes, and they were given the opportunity to vote for their top 15. Then we would compile them all. Then they had the opportunity to change it. And we went through this iteration at least 4 or 5 times. That iteration culminated in the lists of tasks or work plan items that you see on the far left side. This was recommended for approval on January the 5th and is scheduled for city council review and consideration this month. The goal of the Planning Commission was, let's see if we can focus on a 3-year period. At the same time, let's also see if we can't focus on some things that are relevant to Lakewood that are doable, and not get so far into areas where there's going to be a lot of pointed discussion and issues of regulatory control. And if I can get into that for just a minute, oftentimes these documents talk about vehicle miles traveled, where you're trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled by a regulatory process. That results in a lot of difficult decision-making that we can spin our wheels on for quite some time. Otherwise, this is focusing on things that we're currently doing and things that we can do. Another example are some cities are now basically saying, we're not approving gas stations anymore in commercial zones. That's being considered and adopted in California. I'm not sure that that's an appropriate type of approach, but nevertheless, we are beginning to get into those areas with the state adopting a variety of different codes as it relates to building codes. So we've tried to pare it down to things that we could do. On the far left is the number of tasks. Then you have the list of tasks, the progress, lead department, secondary department, frequency, a start date, and an end date. Now, some of this is fairly aggressive, but if we don't start somewhere, we won't get anywhere. So this is my attempt to address climate change at the local level in Lakewood. Number one, I found this one to be very difficult and incorporate an environmental justice assessment into the climate change work plan. We've not started that. Number two, prepare a comprehensive greenhouse gas emissions inventory and forecast. That's actually been done for the last 2 years, and we do it using the Google Earth software system. I basically provide them information and my name, and they go ahead and do the calculation, and I look it up from time to time, and then they show us how much greenhouse gas emissions we are providing, but they also break it down by a whole variety of different systems. They tell you how much greenhouse gas is being brought into the city, the number of traffic and traffic movements going outside the city, the potential for electrification and so forth. There's a lot of information there, and we have not used it to the extent that we should. Beginning in July, June this year, we will be hiring a person to take over this whole issue of climate change specifically for the city of Lakewood and working on this work plan. Number three, establishing emissions reduction goals for Lakewood. I don't see that happening for some time yet, and you'll see the start date and the end date being a couple of years out. Number 4, develop a public engagement plan for climate change. This is in process. And we chose to use University of Washington Evans School of Public Management and Policy to help us. So we have 4 graduate level students working on developing a very detailed qualitative survey on this particular subject, which may be followed up by a quantitative survey a little bit later this year. It also is helping us to develop environmental justice assessment into the climate change work plan itself. There's a tremendous amount of interest in how we're approaching this. MRSC, Municipal Research Services Center, is watching us, as well as another city, Shoreline. We're each talking about a public engagement process and doing it quite differently. And they're going to compare the results to share with other cities over time. We should have these reports done by early June or late May. One of the things that I've already been able to identify very quickly is there are definitely generational issues in this subject. Young people are very interested in this, and we had a high level of interest with the Youth Council. The Youth Council was given the opportunity to participate. I only needed 2 volunteers. I ended up with 6. And I'm seeing that same level of energy in other areas where we talk about this. Number 5, to make sure that this is legit, let's take this work plan and then fold it into the current strategic plan that the city has adopted. If the council approves this, then number 5 then this whole thing will be developed into the strategic plan for the city of Lakewood. Number 6 is provide monitoring and implementation reports. See if we can't develop a dashboard that addresses climate change. We haven't started that yet. Number 7, work with energy providers, because we have 3, to market existing energy conservation programs with Lakewood property owners. Where appropriate, propose new programs to better fit Lakewood's needs. Consider the use of HUD grants and low-interest loans to complement energy provider conservation programs. The issue here is to try to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that come from buildings. And since we do not own utilities, this is believed to be the most efficient and cost-effective way of addressing this at this time. Again, it's not started. I'm waiting definitely from comments from the council, so I don't really have a timeline yet. Number 8, develop a regional approach and best practices to address climate change. One of the strategies is to adopt the climate change Pierce County-wide planning policies, which are currently under review. And there is a small working group of Lakewood, Tacoma, in Pierce County having this discussion at this time. Number 9, update the city's non-motorized transportation plan. And there's a whole series of other specific objectives with here, 9A, B, C, D. Nikki, can you, yeah, thank you. In 9E, I won't, for sake of time this evening, I won't speak to each one of them directly. But the idea here is to update our transportation plan so we can get additional funds so we can start fixing and repairing our transportation system so we can address a better use of bicycles, walkways, pathways, and things like that. Number 10, we have developed some transit-oriented projects with the downtown and with the Lakeview Station subarea plan. But there continues to be ongoing discussion of can we improve land use around many of our commercial corridors. We have not done this yet. We've had internal discussions about it. And so I'm suggesting to the city council that it's time to look at key commercial corridors to do some additional planning to support redevelopment. Number 11, review and update existing mixed use and infill development incentives. We've done some of this already. And something that came up just very recently is the annual housing report, where we're seeing that the state legislature would like us to increase density in all single-family zones for the purpose of promoting middle missing housing. However, we may have a problem in that large sections of the city where the water and sewer systems were built were based upon existing densities. In some areas, the systems are quite old, and we're not sure you could have increased density without major improvements to the existing sewer and water system. This needs to be studied. We have not started it yet. Number 12, this is for large projects in the future. Establish a trip reduction policy that includes remote work strategy and appropriate technology, and consider incorporating this into the city's land use and development code. This is a big step. Actually, the city of Lakewood is actually doing it right now. 70% of city employees work from home. And so that strategy, if it's successful, could have significant benefit for other large and medium-sized businesses where we have office workers. Number 13, promoting green development standards. This is actually a tough one because there's actually two different models. There's the LEED, and then the ICC has developed an equivalent program of development codes, but they're sort of competing. So we haven't decided how to best pursue this, but this needs more work, and that's why it's on hold. Number 14, use a supplemental greenhouse gas climate change impact worksheet of climate change impacts and potential mitigation when conducting an environmental review process under the State Environmental Policy Act. This is on hold because I do believe we need to amend the WACs, but we are thinking about doing it just as a voluntary basis so that we can actually take a look at what exact specific programs and projects, when they're proposed, how much greenhouse gases are they actually emitting. Number 15 is about resiliency planning, and keeping the city's hazard mitigation plan to address climate change. The big issue for Lakewood here is floodplain management, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. But right now, the hazard mitigation plan is reviewed and approved by the police department. I believe that over time, we will be introducing climate mitigation plans into the hazard plan. Review and as appropriate update Title 14, which is our environmental protections. This may need to be updated to address climate change. We haven't started it. And number 17, for Jason Gerwin, develop an urban forest management plan. So there you go. It's not started. That might be something you may wish to lobby the city council for sooner rather than later. I have dates of 24 and 20 of January 24 and ending in December 24. But if that's not appropriate and you want to do something different, please let me know.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave.
I was reading your mind.
Hey, absolutely.
18, hire a consultant to explore ways in which the city and property owners can monetize carbon capture and storage. This might be coming down the future at some point, and there probably are significant sequestration opportunities available on many of the parks properties. And I'm thinking that you might want to take a look at an economist and taking a look at what we do have, because this may become an issue at some future date if you have the opportunity to do carbon credits and debits, either for city projects or something else. But I thought it would be best just to, think a little forward and see how this could unfold in the future. And the commission was very interested in this. They liked the idea of using economics and promoting people's self-interest to bring about changes to the climate. Number 19, establish a climate change chapter to the city's comprehensive plan. We've done that. And apparently, we just recently won an award from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department for that effort. 20, revise the tree preservation code, underway. So move to the next page. Update the downtown sub-area plan and Lakewood Station District as market conditions and climate conditions change. That's currently in progress. Enforce the Uniform Plumbing Code. And this is having to address water conservation by requiring low flow appliances and fixtures in all new development. It doesn't address existing development, but it is something that has something to do with climate change, and I'm going to take credit for things that we're already doing, so I added it. Number 23, we do now require electric vehicle and charging infrastructure. The code section includes charging infrastructure for accessible parking spaces as well. And so when you start taking a look at major additions or changes in parking in some of your park facilities, you may be required to install this. We'll see. The current code allows for occupiable roofs and vegetative and landscape roofs already. Most people don't know that. That's a wonderful way of improving landscaping and open space opportunities in an urban setting. And this is something that we are monitoring. It's expensive to do, but it might be something that the city may want to work with the developer in the future on a larger project. Number 25, we did this.
Dave, can I ask a question on that one real quick? Is occupiable roof, would that mean like if you added solar panels to your roof, or can you tell me more what that occupiable counts for, please?
Green roof.
Can you hear me okay? I'm getting a message that my connection is not working well.
You sound great.
This is basically having to put vegetable gardens or landscaping on top of your roof if you want to. That's all it is. If you're talking about electrical panels and stuff like that, to my mind gets back to working with the energy companies to see if we can do a better job of promoting electric panels on existing properties. One of the things we've talked about, but we haven't done yet, is do we want to extend this and talk about large panels on major industrial projects or commercial projects with flat roofs?
Gotcha.
That can be affordable and efficient, but we need to spend some more time on that. We're not ready for it at the moment, but that's perhaps one of the things our new employee will be working on when they come on board later this year.
No, great info. Thank you.
26, we encourage drought tolerant and native vegetation already, but I'm thinking that this might be something that we will want to change in the future to require. We promote it currently in the code, but this is something that we may want to look at a little bit differently. 29, this is more long-term. There's a lot of discussion about creating a South Tacoma Way bus transit system that goes from downtown Tacoma all the way to JBLM. There is one now underway or being planned and constructed on Pack Highway. But the city is aggressively choosing to ask Pierce Transit to take a look at another route. And since I'm on transit for just a moment, I want to talk to a couple of issues. There really isn't significant funds in current transit budgets to promote transit-oriented development. I don't think people are aware of that, but in order for it to be somewhat successful, you need to be able to have pickups at every 15 minutes. We're lucky, the transit company right now is lucky to have it at 30 minutes. They're having difficulties on a lot of operational issues related to COVID and the pandemic. The other thing that's out there that no one's talking about just yet is transit agencies are concerned that people will not come back and use transit after COVID because of health concerns. So those are some issues that have not been resolved. And when you hear all this discussion at the state legislature about promoting transit-oriented development, it sounds nice, but I think there are problems with its implementation. 30, explore the feasibility of reducing the city hall footprint from 3 floors to 2 floors. We plan on having a report out and provided to the city council by July of this year. And then if the council agrees to spend some money, then we would probably make some changes to the structure itself. Number 31, continue to support neighborhood events such as cleanup and recycling events. 32, examine practices to reduce paper. The entire city is moving to an electronic document management system. That is underway. The department having the biggest problem with this is mine, just because of all of the paper in the past 25 years that we have used to collect plans and other related documents. So we are looking at that. I suspect that this will take us about 2 years to complete, but when all is said and done, the city of Lakewood will run purely on an electronic basis in the future. At least that's the goal. 33, every 2 years, or as otherwise dictated by the state, update Title 15, building and construction codes to address hazards resulting from climate change. I don't think people understand that the building codes can have a major impact on addressing climate change. One of the issues most recently is the state has required a high level of energy conservation for additions and alterations. It's really been difficult to enforce, in part because nobody understands how to do it. The other part to this is that many of the materials that the state wants to have installed don't exist or are unavailable. And so as a result, frankly, we have seen a reduction in the total number of additions and alterations for residential housing over the past year. It's going to take a while before that returns. Excuse me. Number 34. In 2018, the federal government revised the floodplain for Lakewood. And sections that were not in the floodplain were now all of a sudden in the floodplain. In significant areas in the Springbrook neighborhood, as well as along Clover Creek from Springbrook all the way to Clover Park High School. So as a result of that, the Public Works Department is pursuing an engineering alternative analysis. It is currently underway. It's already started with completion in March, and we're probably looking at some improvements to the floodplain and the floodway during that period of time. We've also come across an interesting problem in that with the current floodplain, the way it's been proposed or the way it exists, it's possible that in the future, in large flood events, I-5 will flood between Bridgeport Way and 512, and likely shut down portions of I-5 for a period of up to 5 days. So the city's taking this seriously. We don't want that to happen in part because the impact it has on I-5, and then all of a sudden you have tens of thousands of vehicles now on city streets, which will tear the place apart during that 5-day period. And lastly, number 35 is the Lakewood, which is a member of the South Sound Military Communities Partnership, is advocating the use of state and federal dollars to make improvements to I-5 Nisqually corridor. Estimated cost is $4 billion. That makes this a mega project, but it would be used to restore impaired ecosystems, mitigate the flood risk to I-5, which is scheduled to flood sometime in the next 15 to 20 years. That's currently underway. We're working with a wide variety of different agencies to promote this. We've had some level of success, but the next big ask is over $100 million. So we'll see what happens. So that so far is our 3-year work plan. Again, I think it might be a little on the aggressive side, but at the same time, we got to start somewhere. And I'm trying to find things that I would believe that the community will support. And much of what we talked about, I think, fits into that category, as well as meeting state criteria. The other thing is I am waiting with bated breath on this perception study, because I think that's going to have a lot of influence on how the community addresses climate change in the future and how elected officials want to address public policy as well. So we're kind of putting the work plan in front of the perception study. But the timing is what it is, and I felt it appropriate to move it forward. So that's where we're at. This was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. And it was a lot of hard work on their part. And now we move on to the City Council. I have no idea how the City Council feels about this, but we will find out very soon. And thank you for the opportunity to provide this presentation.
Any questions for Dave?
It's
I've
a
got
good
one,
topic.
Dave. Oh,
It's
go
a
ahead,
great
Vito.
topic. It's a great topic, Dave, and thank you for this report and all the work that you've done. It's great.
Thank you.
Dave, when is that going in front of City Council?
February the 14th for review.
14th for review, okay.
And then it's scheduled tentatively for action the next regular meeting in February, which would be around the 21st or so.
Okay. And so,
The third Monday in February.
okay. And so, I agree with you, Dave. I think it's an ambitious plan, but man, I'm proud of the city of Lakewood and proud of the work that you guys are doing, even though it's aggressive. Like you say, you got to start somewhere. And I feel like our city staff and our leaders are taking it seriously and moving it forward. And I know that's with your leadership, Dave. So thank you for that. And keep pushing it hard, because we need it, and know that it's appreciated.
Well, you're just happy because the urban forest management plan's in it.
Oh, absolutely. You rang my bell there for sure. And I do want to try to give some support if I can make it to that third Monday meeting. I'd definitely like to come and share my support for the plan. You got something, Mary?
Yeah, I was just going to note, it's actually February 22nd, because
Okay.
when we have a holiday on the Monday, they go to the next day. So
Yep.
it will be on that. And then the presentation is, of course, Valentine's Day. So you're going to have to talk to your wife about missing that day for the meeting.
Exactly. And which would you guys advise is better where for council to have comments, the study session or the review or the actual council meeting?
They don't typically take comments at study session.
Study session. Okay.
And so they would, if there's no additional work for Dave, where he may have to go back and reorganize
Sure.
or reprioritize or clarify something. So, but we can take a note, Nikki and Bryce, we can make a note to follow this and then just give you an update when the presentation is, so that if for some reason it got, delayed for studies to another study session or something, we'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah, no, I just, from a parks perspective, I think having someone or, from us weighing in and supporting it doesn't hurt the cause for sure. So if I can provide that, I'm going to try to.
And I'm just going to note that it's exciting that you have the youth involved, because I think that's really going to make a difference in just the language that's used, the information that's gathered, and just, of course, the next generation. It's going to be really important to hear, because I think they're a lot more aware of the impacts of climate change.
It's going to be hard to ignore the impact of climate change without young people not being involved. I think this council's good, and then they are going to have to address it. And so I think that's a big push. And the reaction with the students, with high school, the youth council has all been, let's do something and start as quickly as possible. There's no time to waste.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's great to hear. I love to hear it in the community. So any other questions for Dave? Dave, another bang up job. Thank you for your presentation. And with that being said, we roll on with Mary, and we're going to talk about our 2022 work plan, which not only is this one aggressive, we got an aggressive work plan in parks too. So
good night, all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. So we looked at this and worked on this, I think, at our last meeting or the one before. So I'm just following up with you on what the council has approved, because of course they approve our work programs in January. So already some of the dates and topics have been moved around a little bit, just based on opportunity. So, but the items that are listed in there will be addressed at some point throughout the year, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on some of the things that we'll be talking about this year. First thing is the Fort Stoughton Park boundary line adjustment. You know, we've been talking about that for quite some time. The holdup, you know, the city became property owners on June 19th, 2019. I have this beautiful rock that was painted by one of my favorite artists that was given to us to commemorate that. And since that time, we've been waiting for Pierce College to become property owners of the land that they lease. And they just sent us word on Monday that it's happening. So I don't think it's officially recorded, but I think it's been transferred. So we're really excited about that. Now we'll get together and start talking about those boundary lines. As you know, most people think the whole area is park, and it isn't. Part of it is college property. So we'll want to have those conversations regarding access, the boundary lines. The college has no interest in having any portion of the lake from a liability perspective. And so you'll see some funny lines out there, but we'll be working on that. The park CIP project, you know, I give you little summaries at each meeting, but we'll do a good review of all the park projects and what we have happening. It's funny, the city manager is updating his state of the city, and he asked me to send him a summary of what we accomplished in 2021, what we started in 2021 that was extending into 2022, and then what was our 2022 list. And so there are like 20 projects just in 2021 that move forward are 4. We have 11 new projects starting in 2022, and it's over $17 million in projects in funds. So, I mean, that is a lot of work for a little team, but we're excited. So we'll give you a much more, you know, detailed review of where we're at and where we're going. We've been working a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really important in our community. We've been working on it internally as a city and a team, and also externally to make sure that we're really looking at our community and are we being inclusive? Are we being intentional in the types of programs that we're doing and getting folks to participate and or taking the programs to them, right? So they can participate. So we'll give you an update on that. Also, we have a new DEI staff person. The school district has a diversity coordinator, and as well as Pierce College and also Clover Park Technical College. So, you know, we've all been working together. So we may try and do like kind of a combo to see what's happening in our community. That's a really good brush up publicly what's going on there. So we'll update on that. Let's see. Oh, outdoor adventure programming. We received a grant last year. So we're going to be doing some activities this year, like 6 or 8 different events to get kids and families just outside, like our fishing events coming back, and we'll do some things like orienteering and, you know, photography, bird watching, things like that. So we're excited about that. And we also just found out that we received the SEEK grant, which is getting kids outdoors, but it was funded through Department of Office of Public Education. So that's going to be a really cool summer camp. It'll be an all-day summer camp that'll really focus on some outdoor stuff. We've already been working with the Nisqually. It's called Billy Frank Interpretive Center now, but it's the old Nisqually Refuge, and really doing some cool projects to get kids really connected to the environment, to the outdoors. So we've got a lot of those coming up, and we'll give you an update as we do our summer program. Get to talk about street ends again. I know it's our favorite topic, and we're all super excited about it. But we'll be taking the report that you provided, the recommendation that you provided, gosh, many, many years ago. And we'll be looking at what would it take to sort of implement those ideas? How effective are they? How realistic are they? Maybe really what's the land use out there? What are some cost estimates? So we'll be doing some work on that internally and then sharing that with you in the community down the road. Park code, if that comes up, council directs us to look at those things, or we might bring in an issue up. We will be looking at the resolution regarding naming. And so that is one code that's not necessarily park code, but it is in the city's code. And so we'll be updating that soon. And then we just had a good climate change initiatives, tree preservation ordinance, and we'll be getting an update on that throughout the year too. So we've sort of put it through the calendar. And just to note that we are going to be having our February meeting on February 22nd. It'll be at 5:30. That'll be the same night as that tree policy. So, you know, maybe you get a 2 for 1. But we're going to be working with the LHAB, which is the Landmark Heritage Advisory Board. And so during the work program review, they had noted that we were working on this, and they would really like to have, not just they, but council would like, part of the summary, part of one of the review topics is what's the, why was an area named what it is and what's the impact of change? And so they can provide some perspective. So the council thought that was a good idea to have them participate in whatever review we did. So as we are talking about the naming policy, we'll just do a joint meeting and find out what they have to say and see how they can provide some insight to make that a better document and or a better review process. And then, I've just got those listed here, so I don't really want to go into a bunch of details of all the different meeting topics and dates. We hope that they stay, but sometimes they get moved around a little bit. Like, for instance, while she was talking, Courtney, I added tree committee update because she thought maybe coming back in May. So I just threw that on our agenda so we didn't forget. But we'll be working with community development to provide you with updates as we can. So besides these sort of city topics and besides these work program and action items, are there any topics or of interest to the board that you'd like to get a presentation on or have us bring in a special speaker? Just besides the action thing, sometimes it's nice to have updates. So are there any topics or policies that you'd like us to do some research on or think about? We'd be happy to hear more about that.
Mary, is there an update on the Wohop Lake quality level?
Oh,
Get out of my head, Vito. That's exactly what I was thinking.
I think that what happened is that they are going to have to do a third treatment or a second treatment. I think they did too. So we can get an update on that. That's a great idea. Public Works Engineering has been working on that with our SWIM staff, the stormwater management folks. So we'll get an update for you on that and maybe have them come to a future meeting to share that information. That's a great topic.
That would be good.
Are there any other topics that any of you have an interest in or trends that you've been hearing about, or Fred, maybe something that's happening at Metro that we should be thinking about or doing?
I was getting ready to talk earlier about some recommendations I might have for how to do the greenhouse gas emissions things, because we're getting ready to start that. But then you guys elaborated and talked about how you were using the Google Earth, and I'd forgotten that. And it sounds like you're farther along in it than we are, but we're getting ready to contract for it at the zoo in Northwest Trek, and we're using a consultant that'll help us put together all of our data.
Well, Fred, I know that Dave would be happy to probably share when you get someone online, or even as you're developing a scope for that. I'm sure that if you wanted to be refreshed in that conversation, either the information that was provided or points of contact, I'm sure Dave would be happy to share that with you, or we can get that information to you. There's no reason to recreate the wheel, right?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And Mary, that would be something of interest to me, just as Lakewood gets more data sets and you can start to see patterns and stuff like that. And I don't know what that periodic time frame is, but I think it'd be a revolving kind of topic of interest of the board, just to know what the data is and see it and hear about it. So
yeah, we'll look and see what we have, and we'll get that out to the whole board. We like to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Anything else for Mary?
That's our work program, and I'll touch base on the special events when I go to my next topic.
All right, we're talking director's report, it looks like.
Yeah, I think I have to stop sharing and start over, so let's try that. Almost there, friends. Director's report. Okay, doesn't look a whole lot different. So except for we're going to go here. So we'll send this out to you all so that you have it as well. But I just wanted to do a real quickie update on January 2022. Happy New Year, except for it's February 1st. So I guess it's not exactly Happy New Year. But anyways, we've got a big year ahead of us. We've got lots happening, even though COVID was, keeping people indoors and closing things down, we've been open for business, and we're starting to now bring in those things that we haven't done for a couple of years. And then we're doing a bunch of new things. So we're kind of regrouping with our team, and we'll be ready for 2022. But just as an update, these are some of those projects that I mentioned earlier that we'll be focusing on this year. Springbrook Park, we all worked on that last year, the design and the master plan. The permitting's taken a bit longer than we expected, and so we'll be starting late summer. And the reason I say that, there's some things that we can do that aren't going to impact the use of the park, but since that's the only space for that neighborhood, we wouldn't be doing those kinds of major construction during the summer. So we'll be starting late summer and really focusing on the fall months to get that work done. The next gateway, I was going to say primarily our last gateway, is going to be, we're going to be looking up at 84th and Tacoma Mall Boulevard, that's sort of towards Wards Lake Park and the backside of the, or by the theater area. But as you might have seen, we had a gateway that someone plowed straight through over the winter holiday, and it was like, touchdown right through the sign. And just on Sunday night, we had another person driving through there, and there wasn't even a sign to hit. So I think we're gonna just get rid of all the stuff, rebuild the wall, plant some flowers, and take a deep breath there and figure out what to do next. Because that corner's been hit a zillion times, and we really got to figure out what to do. Size, shape, and location. That's just been a challenge. So we're working on that. Our park sign, we're going to be bringing that back. We're going to be looking for a contractor to help us to get a design and a system that the council can be comfortable with so that we can get those signs updated. We have signs that need to be updated at all of our parks, and some of them are tied to construction projects. And so we really want to get that moving forward. Wards Lake Park, oh my gosh, that's a $2.5 million project. We're working on purchasing that 10 acres of land, which has been phenomenally complicated, I have to tell you, because it's bits and pieces of other bits and pieces. And so we've learned an awful lot about a whole lot of things that I hope I don't ever have to deal with again. But anyway, we're working on that. But the great part is we'll be starting to do the final design to make those improvements. And our goal is to a lot of permitting for that, because we do have land and water conservation funds. So there'll be, a lot of critical areas, as Courtney described it. They're not sensitive, they're critical, so they're really well defined. And so we're gonna have to deal with a lot of issues out there. But we'll be bringing information your way so you can keep up with what's happening and provide us some feedback along the way. Sealy Lake, we're kind of finalizing that design for that. It's changed a bit, but really the main improvement you'll see is going to be in the parking lot area as a new entrance to the trail, and Pierce County will be picking up that project. And so we'll be supporting that along the way, but that's exciting to see happening. The turf field infields at Fort Slocum Park, as you recall, Pierce College is adding a home field. So they've got, bigger improvements and things that they want to provide at that site. And so we'll be, we're working on that right now. Again, we're working on the design, and we'll do the permitting, and we'll get that going. Probably that'll go until into next year, just because we'll probably be waiting until, well, I think it's supposed to start around late summer, but we'll give you an update on that. But that's very exciting, and it's a big bang for our buck. And Pierce College just decided today, I think they're going to add another $600,000 of improvement. So it'll really be a nice resource out there for the community to be able to use when they're not using it. American Lake Park, we're going to be doing an RFQ here in the next couple of weeks to hire a consultant to work on the final design for that, so we can permit and construct that. As you know, we've got several grants, and it's really to clean up the uplands and then to make the waterfront area accessible. We'll also, because of some of the safety issues that happened last year with just way too many people at the park in the summer, and then we had a shooting in that area, and then kids jumping off the docks into the boat launch area, So we're going to probably do a little extra work down there to figure out some temporary, seasonal, and changes that can make that safe for everybody, because safety is our #1 priority. And then we did buy the land across the street from the park for overflow parking on those 10 really hot days out of summer where the area is just packed. So that's actually going out to bid this week, and we'll be making construction. They'll be doing construction on the other side. And again, that will be really strictly looking at it as an overflow site. Many of you participated in the bridge ribbon cutting. That was really fun. If you haven't been down there at the end of Phillips Road that connects to Kobayashi, it's really beautiful down there. And now we're working on phase 2. We are going to be looking at extension to our grant, because it's just taken a long time to figure out how to get from here to there. But we're going to do it, and we're going to get the resources, and then we're going to make it happen. So that's very exciting. Oakbrook Park, which is actually misspelled, I should fix that. We have about $50,000 to go out to that site, neighborhood park. We redid the playground 2 years ago, And it's just, what do we want to do there? What does the neighborhood want us to do? Is it a new picnic shelter? Is it some parking improvements? They need a new sign as well. But so anyway, we're going to work with them, as well as at Friendly Park. Their playground's due to be replaced. So we'll go out there and talk to them and say, hey, what do you want to see happen here? That was that park that was built by the neighbors. And so those are two projects that we'll be working on. Fort Steilacoom boundary line adjustment, I talked about that already. And the caretaker's house at Fort Steilacoom was built in the 70s. We haven't done anything to it but paint, throw some paint on it. So we're kind of fixing it up so it meets codes and it's more comfortable for our caretaker to live in. And then the other really exciting thing we're working on is we've been working with the Nisquallies. We've been working really hard on our relationship and our partnership. As you know, when we did that naming process, we received some feedback from them that was, they were really surprised that the city would consider that. And although we had to sort of explain what happened, it really just reminded us that we need to continue our conversation. So we're going to be doing this design charrette together because we did that partnership projects. I think I shared that at a previous meeting with you all, the 4 projects that we're working on. And so we're going to do some brainstorming on how we can get those things moving forward. And we're going to meet with them on their facility over there. It's technically Olympia, I think, but beautiful building. So we're going to go there and do a design charrette in February, and then they're going to follow up and come to the pavilion in March. So we're really excited about that and just continuing that partnership and that relationship and acknowledging, how important they were to our community. So yeah. So that's a lot of information quick. Our senior center, the courts have moved out, so we have access to the building. Unfortunately, after all the rain and the snow, they believe there may be some structural damage. So now they're having to assess all of that. The shell of the building is a little challenge. We got leaking windows and doors. And so we're really telling them they need to kind of get things tightened up so that we can move back in and have a safe place for our older adults. So we're kind of sad because it's basically, it's been 2 years. So a lot of the instructors are gone. The volunteers are no longer available to work. So we're really kind of starting from scratch. So, we can kind of revamp and redo, but we have been working and meeting with them this whole time, doing offsite activities and virtual activities. And so we'll get that up and going, but there's still a few delays just on the availability of the building. So today's first day of Black History Month, so it's also Chinese New Year. But anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge that, there was a beautiful video that was done. I believe I sent it out to you all. So if you didn't have a chance to take a look at it, we'll forward this out. You can click to it. You can also get it on our website. We just have so many amazing people in our community, and it was a beautiful video and really incorporated the full spectrum of ages and just the hopes and dreams of folks to learn from our past and really move forward with being a great community. We all live in, it says the theme is, we all live in Lakewood. So it's like, let's celebrate that. Another project, just Partnership Parks, you guys participated, many of you did. We've kept you update on the restoration project. Partnership Parks presented the feasibility study to council earlier this month. Council was unanimously supportive of the project, supporting providing some seed money to Partnership Parks to develop organizational capacity to sort of hit this campaign. Partnership Parks is committed to raising $3.5 million to making doing this public-private partnership, and then the city would be doing that. It'll probably take about 3 years, so you'll be seeing more about that. But it was a really great step, and we've known the council is supportive of this project, and they were able to actually, share that with the community. So we're excited about what's happening next. Lots of fun things to work on, and we'll keep you in the loop on that. And then just last but not least, there's just been all kinds of stuff happening. You can read the last thing. We've done a lot of community outreach, and there's just lots of opportunities to share the benefits and the importance of parks and recreation and the great work that we do. So that's my director's report. Oh, sorry, before I jump. Here's our work program, to be determined. And then there's also a list of our community events. So just so you know, we're going to be doing 4 events on the plaza, the Colonial Plaza, like our grand opening and like our 25th anniversary. People really love those. So we're going to try to do 4 of those. And then a whole lot of other things. So Farmers Market's going to move to Tuesdays. And it started on Tuesdays, and then we moved to Fridays, and now we're moving back to Tuesdays to tie with our summer concert park in the park series. We recognize that as COVID, hopefully everything goes down and All the festivals and activities are starting. A Friday market, it's really hard on the vendors because it's such a big market, but a lot of them are doing festivals and weekend activities. But also we recognize that Monday is the day that most of our market vendors and farmers, they reprocess, pick all of the vegetables and activities. So Tuesday's the freshest day. We get the best stuff. So anyway, we're going to try that again and see how that works. And just lots of fun stuff happening. And stay tuned, and we'll keep you in the loop.
Any
That's
questions for Mary on the director's report?
I have a question, Mary. Are we paying for that sign at Bridgeport, or is somebody's insurance paying for it?
First of all, the guy that did it, the man that did it has insurance. Yay. 2, they caught him. Yay. And he fell asleep at the wheel. It wasn't like, you know, a drunk driver, which is typically the people who hit the corners are altered in some fashion, but this individual fell asleep at the wheel, and I mean, straight on through. It was remarkable. But yes, we have insurance. There's a claim, so they'll be able to, we'll be able to be compensated for that and to fix whatever we decide to do there.
That's nice for a change.
Yeah. It's about 50-50 on some of those things.
Any other questions for Mary on the director's report? All right, hearing none. And do we have any board member comments?
It was fun going to the Chambers Bridge dedication here. I guess it was a while back, wasn't it? Anyway, it was fun. It was good to see a lot of the folks there, and it was good recognition of accomplished project, or at least that first step.
Yeah, fantastic. Sylvia, you got something?
Reason I can't unmute.
You got it now. We got you now.
I enjoy watching.
Oh, you went mute now. You went mute.
I enjoy watching people down there every day, and they seem to be really enjoying it.
That's cool.
I'm just curious, Mary, do we know on our YouTube, what kind of visibility do we get? Do we have, is there a way to tell how many people actually watch us or you know, look it up afterwards or anything like that?
Are you talking about the park board meeting or like special events or just in general? I do believe from Facebook and YouTube that there's some kind of data that is collected on number of users, and there might even be some demographics too regarding, I know Facebook does that. They have a demographic breakdown. It's anonymous, but it shares. So I bet you they do it on YouTube too. We can find out more about that. In fact, you know, it might even be good for one of our topics to have Jim Capriva. He's our communications person for the city. Maybe he wants to come and share some stuff about communication. That might be interesting, a topic for us as well. Michael, we could ask that question and get that for you too.
I share the curiosity, Michael. It'd be neat to just kind of know what, you know, how many people are actually engaging, you know, so.
Because I've looked it up before, different meetings, you know, you just go to Lakewood YouTube and you get all kinds of stuff to look at. And you could sit there for, you know, weeks looking at all the meetings that go on and stuff. And I was just kind of curious if, you know, people are actually accessing it.
No, I think great question. Any other board member comments? Hearing none, we will meet on the 22nd. Maybe some of us will stay on for the council meeting, give some comments. Hopefully that's me. And with that being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Sylvia?
Second.
Second. No, third.
Oh, Fred, Evito got you this time. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bryce. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night, y'all.
Good night, everybody. Be well. We'll talk to you soon.